Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Alex and I'm a nomadic online business manager, and I help you streamline your operations so that you can run your business from anywhere in the world. And today we're going to be talking about 3 different tips for planning a launch so it's easier to execute. Launches can be a very profitable endeavor in your online business if you have streamlined operations. They can also easily become a very overwhelming project where things are happening when they shouldn't be, and it can become a very chaotic thing very quickly. But with these 3 tips, you'll be able to plan your next launch with ease and ring in all the benefits from doing your launch, aka money. Tip number 1 is have a clear project plan with due dates assigned. This part is essential during the beginning phase of your launch. Now, I like to plan my launches with 5 different phases: plan, prepare, host a launch event, i.e. a webinar, a challenge, even a wait list, whatever you want to do there, open cart, which is when you're actively selling, and wrap up. I'll be going over those 5 different phases in a separate video, which I'll link in the description below once it is live. But with having a project plan with due dates assigned from the very beginning, you know from the beginning that your team, even if it's just yourself, even if your team is just you know what things are happening when they need to be happening. And you want to make sure that you are training your team, if you do have a team, on some kind of project management tool is essential, especially when you do start getting into that delegation mindset, because when you don't have any kind of task management system to keep track of who is doing what and by when, then things can easily start falling through the cracks, which we don't want, especially for a big project such as a launch. Tip number 2 is use some kind of database to track the content you have that's going live. Now, personally, I prefer ClickUp or Notion to manage content. I know Airtable is a strong contender as well, but personally it's just not my favorite for managing content. But having some kind of tool to map out what your content calendar should look like during your launch is essential, because you'll want to be able to keep track of individual pieces of content, not just assigning a task like schedule IG stories throughout the whole entire whatever period, like your open cart period, your driving to your webinar period, whatever you're working with. You want to make sure you have some kind of tracker in place for each individual piece of content. Now, if you're someone who does, like, when I say each individual piece of content, you can consolidate stories into one. So like, I like to refer to stories as a story set. So you might have 5 Instagram story slides that have the same information throughout the whole one that you're just going to repeat throughout the launch. That's okay, but you want to still have like a tracker for that story set. You don't need one individual task or record in your database to indicate each individual slide for the stories. You want to have it consolidated. I do recommend having individual tasks for each email, because then you can really keep track of like, okay, has it been scheduled and anything like that, because oftentimes something happens in the launch that changes need to happen. And by having that individual tracker in the form of a database for your content, you can easily update the status of each individual piece of content. Let's say something happens halfway through the launch and you need to change some things in your content. What I recommend doing is in your database, then you have that tracker and you know like, okay, these are the pieces of content that are going live after this change has been made, and these are the pieces of content I now need to update. So it's very clear for your team and for yourself which pieces of content need to be updated, have they been updated, the status of those pieces of content, and then you're good to go. Tip number 3 is to create a user flow for your buyer behavior. So what I recommend doing at the beginning of your launch project planning period is creating some sort of visual maps. I like to use Whimsical as my process mapping tool. I'll leave a link down in the description below to a video really giving you an in-depth tutorial for what I mean by creating a user flow. But essentially it's a process so that you and your team all know what process the buyers are going through, right? So from the beginning, when they're registering for the webinar, what does that process of joining the launch, when do they join? Typically it's when they're registering for whatever launch event you might be having. Even if it is just something like a wait list, that's totally fine, but that's still that initial starting point. And then it's the entire process that they're going through. This is really important to take into account things like bonuses, upsells, VIP upsells, fast action bonuses, all of those little things that will have your people kind of divert down in different paths. You want to have that very clear, like what are they doing if they make a certain choice. I definitely recommend watching the user flow video I have linked in the description, just so you have a clear idea of like what that really entails. But it's essential for planning at the beginning of a launch, so everyone on your team knows exactly where people are going depending on which decision your buyers make. And then as a bonus tip, I strongly recommend having some sort of documentation for your launch process so you can easily duplicate it the next time. Whether you're duplicating it by outsourcing it to a team member or you're duplicating it for yourself, it'll help you not have to recreate the wheel from scratch the next time you launch. The more experience you gain by launching, you want to document that down into an SOP, because there's no reason to have to recreate everything from scratch, right? During the process of launching, you might recognize like, oh, I definitely don't need to do this next time. You want to make sure you're documenting that in detail somewhere so you can easily reference it back in the future. So those are my 3 tips, technically 4 tips for how to plan your next launch with ease. Let me know if you have any questions in the description below. If you're interested in having a templatized version of a project plan for managing your project with ease, I strongly recommend checking out my Manager Launch ClickUp template. It has everything you need to accomplish all of the tasks that I mentioned in this video, all of the tips, not really tasks, but tips in this video, so you can easily execute your next launch with ease. So you can find all the information for that in my in the description for this video down below. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments. Bye guys.